Hello everyone. Welcome to .NET Foundation channel and welcome to .NET Conf Noida 2020. So as usual, last year also our user group NCR Cloud and Code Techies organized .NET Core Conference. Last year we organized it offline, but this year, as everyone knows that because of this COVID-19 situation, all the events are happening online. So we are organizing this event online this year, and I will be having with me, I have Nitin and Abhishek Matre who will be speaking on various topics. So we can start with my topic, that is multi-platform Blazor application development. Let me share my screen and okay. So let's start with my session, which is multi-platform web and desktop development using Blazor. So when we talk about multi-platform development, usually people think about cross-platform development, which is the cross-platform development term is used for mobile, whereas multi-platform is used for desktop, different desktop environments. We'll talk about that later. So before starting, let me introduce myself. I am a certified Azure solution architect, a community speaker, and all my social media handles are Techie Rathor. I also happen to have a YouTube channel. I would love if everyone please subscribe to my channel. And then all the samples which I am giving here or which I'll be showing here is available on my GitHub account. So I'm Techie Rathor everywhere. You can find me just by typing Techie Rathor on Google. Okay, so the agenda will be, we'll talk about multi-platform development. So whenever we have to develop application for different type of desktops, web, when we are talking about web development, we know that we have to host it on some server. But when we talk about desktop development, we have to think about that what kind of OS we have to support. So like I'm using Mac OS, then I also happen to have a a Windows system. 90% of people in India have happen to have Windows machines. Then many people have Linux machines also. So when we are creating an application, what all decisions we have to take, what is multi-platform decisions which we have to take, that we will be talking about in multi-platform development decision. Then we'll talk about introduction to Blazor, what is Blazor and all. Then we'll talk about third-party Blazor libraries, multi-platform Blazor architecture. Then I'll give you a code walkthrough of my multi-platform sample application, and I'll give you the links on how to get started with that. And probably I'll take on some questions using comments, so you can give ask questions in the comment sections, and our moderator will help us out with those questions, and I'll give you the answers. So let's start with what is multi-platform development. So multi-platform development is when we develop application for a web, but we architect it in such a way that it can be utilized on desktop as well as mobiles also. Yes, I said that usually the reason I avoided the term cross platform, because many people say cross platform also, but the reason I avoided cross platform is that cross platform is primarily used for mobile applications. So that's the reason I avoided the term cross platform. I coined this term multi platform, where we support different desktop OSs, that is different desktop operating system, be it Linux, be it Mac, or be it Windows, as well as different like mobile applications also. The best example of multi-platform would be PWAs. But the challenge with PWAs is that PWAs need to be hosted somewhere. Whereas when we develop a native application, that is your regular desktop application, that we can download and install on our machine. So for PWAs to do that, we need to host the PWA somewhere. The user needs to visit that site, and from there he can save it as a PWA. But I'll tell you how we can do PWA, develop PWAs also using Blazor. So currently, this type of multi-platform development is only supported by Electron or Electron.net. So Electron is a framework which uses Node.js and other tools to give you, and Chrome engine to give you a web-based multi-platform application development. So you can use Angular or you can use Vue.js to develop desktop application which can be executed on various desktop platform, be it your be it your iOS. I'm sorry, be it your Mac OS, be it your Windows OS, or be it your Linux OS. And the .NET port of Electron is called Electron.NET. Then there is Uno framework. So Uno framework is mostly used for mobile development. So using Uno, we can develop various mobile applications, be it iOS mobile application, be it Android mobile application, and be it Windows mobile application or UWP application, because the base is basically for Uno, the base application is a UWP application. So you can create Windows UWP application and then iOS and Android application. Recently, after WebAssembly came into picture, they are supporting WebAssembly based web applications also. So you can just use UWP and WinUI to create WebAssembly based web applications and mobile applications using Uno. So Uno also supports this, but Uno, I don't think Uno supports a native desktop application. So Uno doesn't support your Linux based application. So these are two frameworks right now. There are many frameworks, but these two are the more popular one. Whereas the most popular one is of course Electron. So let's talk about what is Blazor. Blazor is basically a free and open source web framework, SPA or single page application based web framework, a single page architecture based web framework to create web applications using C# and HTML. I'm sorry. So it uses the Razor syntax. That is, many .NET developers will be familiar with the Razor syntax, which is used in MVC, which is ASP.NET, be it whether ASP.NET MVC or ASP.NET Core MVC. The same Razor framework is used here in Blazor also. It uses the component-based architecture, just like your Angular, Vue, and other SPA frameworks. It uses the component-based architecture. Then it can run in two ways. Number one is client side, which is in browser with WebAssembly. So it supports your WebAssembly based hosting. And then there is server side, which can be hosted on your server. So we'll talk in detail more about this later on. So when we talk about Blazor full stack development, it works like this, that you have a backend which you can write in your .NET, Go, Node.js, Java, whatever, whatever technology you want to choose. You can write your backend code in that technology, and in the front end code, you can use Blazor to communicate between these technologies. So why you should learn Blazor? Why you should be interested in learning Blazor? The reason is, number one, C# is a fantastic language. As everybody know, C# is very popular language. It is being used by almost more than 1 million developers worldwide. So C# is another, and it's a typed language. It is more popular than other languages. So C# is the reason. Then ASP.NET Core performance, especially this is in terms of Blazor server. So if you are developing Blazor server application, you don't have to worry about JavaScript. You have to just worry about HTML, CSS, and C# code. So you just need to, for formulating or for better designing your HTML pages, you will be using HTML and CSS. And then for doing all the interactions, instead of using JavaScript, you will be using C# to do that. Then you can share the code logic. So since we will be using C# to write the front end code, we can share our code logic, be it validation code, be it models, which is being used like DTO or data transfer objects, which is being used by your, which can be used by your front end as well as your back end. So you can do all those things using Blazor and C#, and it consolidates the front end and back end teams together. So right now, the very hot term is full stack developer, and full stack developer term is being used everywhere. So Blazor helps you become a full stack developer using .NET technologies. So Blazor, as I said, Blazor uses Razor pages. So here there are slight changes in Blazor. When we talk about Razor pages in Blazor, we don't have that .chtml syntax. .chtml extension. We have .razor extension. So all the Blazor pages are with .razor in extension. but the syntax remains same. So you just have to add, as you can see in the code, you just have to add at the rate, and then you can use all the server side things like at the rate code is to create a code block, at the rate page is to create the page like page thing, and then at the rate count, you can see that at the rate current count, it is written, it is used for using a variable which is declared in the server side. So to use the variable which is declared in the server side, you will be using at the rate current count. Similarly, on click, you can see there is at the rate on click. So this at the rate on click means that this event will happen on the server side, or it will be when we talk about in Razor syntax, we talk about it will happen on the server side, but in Blazor syntax, we will say that this event will be taken care by C# code. Okay, so that's the benefit of it. Similarly, if you want to if conditions, or if you want to loop any kind of loop, you can use at the rate to do that also. So in simple terms, we can say that whenever we have to use our C# syntax, we will be using at the rate sign for that. Razor pages code behind. So usually by default, .NET doesn't provide you .NET, be it .NET Core or be it .NET 5. They don't provide you the support to create a backend page or code behind page. But people or Visual Studio gives you option to create a code behind page. What you have to do is you have to just create a class file and then name it as .razor.cs. So when you rename it as .razor.cs with the same name of the Blazor component, it will work. It will come as a code behind file. I'll show you when I show the code example. I'll show you how we can do that or how it is being done. Built-in components. So there are some as I said, Blazor is basically based on a component based architecture, so we can use some built-in components also in Blazor, which is like edit form is there, input text is there, then there are buttons is there. So you can see these kind of built-in component are all automatically transformed into HTML, and they will be using the CSS which is defined in your website typically directly. So it is rendered down to the HTML, and it has many helper properties which help you write the code in a better way. So you can see from example here, input text is rendered to an input text area is rendered to text area, input select is rendered to select, which is a drop down. In simple terms, input number is like input with type number, so we can use like that. Input checkbox uses the input with type checkbox. So all these details are there. So there are many components which are there in Blazor which are rendered to HTML, and these are being done automatically. Apart from that, and you can see how the navigation happens in Blazor is using URI. So URI based navigation is there in Blazor. Every component, every page or every thing, every variable or every page you create, every screen you create is a component. Basically, in simple terms, I would say that every screen you create is a component, unless and until you add this page thing to it. So once you add this page identifier to it, and just like you can see here, page, and then there is slash counter. So once you add the page counter, it becomes a like URI. So it will come, you can see here in href that we have href then is equal to counter. So we can call this page using counter. So this URI based navigation is done. When you have to do the code behind navigation from the code behind, we will be using navigation manager. We have to inject the navigation manager on the page, and then once we inject the navigation manager, we can use navigate to code to use this code behind or to do the navigation from the code behind. So we can do that also. So navigation is done using URIs. So it is simple navigation, very much similar to your ASP.NET Core MVC. It also supports your dependency injection. As I said that Blazor is based out of, or it's kind of a subtype of your ASP.NET framework, and even the Blazor server works inside ASP.NET Core application. So basically, Blazor server application is an ASP.NET Core application. So it supports almost all the features which are there in an ASP.NET Core application. So it supports startup as well as dependency injection. and it also supports your HTTP client and all those things to call the web services and everything. So we can use startup.cs to register our services. If we are using WebAssembly, then we will be using program.cs to register our services. When I said that we can do everything using C sharp, and we don't need JavaScript, but in some scenarios, JavaScript, if you are very good in JavaScript, or if you want to use JavaScript in your application, it's not that you can't use it. You can, of course, call your C sharp code in JavaScript code in C sharp, or vice versa using JavaScript interoperability. So JavaScript interoperability is available, which you can do by injecting this class IGS runtime, and then you can call any JavaScript method using this JS runtime code. So this is kind of the syntax to call JS runtime, which we can use to show alerts, or if we want to use some library which is written in JavaScript, we don't want to write that whole library, so we can use that library, for example chart.js or d3.js. So any kind of library we want to use, we can use JavaScript to do that. Apart from this, there are many third-party components available. All the Blazor components are available as a NuGet. So many people, all the .NET developer know that nowadays NuGet is kind of base of component development. All the .NET components are available as NuGet. So if you want to use any particular .NET feature, you can add the NuGet package for that. For example, many of us use Newtonsoft JSON for doing JSON manipulation, and now with .NET 3.1 and .NET 5, we have system.json NuGet package, which is by default installed. So we can use system.json also for that. Sorry, json.text, something like that. I'm forgetting the exact name. So these kind of changes. So we can use all the NuGet packages which are available in Blazor also, provided they are .NET standard based NuGet packages, or when we are using right now .NET 5, so they are .NET 5 based NuGet packages, so that the compiler or the system automatically takes care of that thing. Then JavaScript, as I already said, that JavaScript can also be consumed using JavaScript interoperability. So we can consume all the JavaScript libraries using JavaScript interop. Then there are many Blazor specific libraries also. So just like ASP.NET or ASP.NET MVC, we have many component libraries which are very popular and used by people using in Blazor. So many component libraries are available in Blazor. A few of them are is Blazorize, which is open source and free, and it has been ported to .NET 5 also. I am using it in almost all of my applications. I uh, thoroughly use Blazorize. The benefit of using Blazorize is that Blazorize supports to use different kind of CSS frameworks. So Blazorize helps using Blazorize. It's Blazorize is kind of an interface component framework. So you can use Material CSS also with this. You can use Bluma CSS also with this. You can use Bootstrap also with this. So that is one of the benefit of Blazorize. Similarly, there is Matte Blazor. Now, Matte Blazor is specifically for those people who love to directly use Material CSS. So Matte Blazor specifically implement Material CSS, and it has the all the components which uses Material CSS. So it is it is completely based on material design. Then there is RADs and Blazor controls. So RADs and Blazor controls are free controls, but they are not open source. So they are given by Radzen. So Radzen is a company, and Radzen is, apart from Radzen, Blazor controls are not only controls. You can use Radzen Blazor control in your application. Apart from that, Radzen is also a low code UI framework. So low code UI tool. So Radzen is available on Mac as well as uh, this Windows as a low-code tool, using which you can design and develop Blazor-based application and Angular-based application. So Radzen supports two type of development, that is Blazor-based development and Angular-based development. Of course, Radzen is paid, So Radzen tool is paid, but Radzen controls are free. So you can use Radzen controls as long as you want, but for using the Radzen tool to develop your or design or use low code method to develop Blazor application, you have to pay for their license. Then there are vendor specific tools like Infragistics, Syncfusion, Telerik, DevExpress. They all have created UI libraries for Blazor which you can utilize. So now let's talk about multi-platform Blazor solution architect, solution structure. So when we are developing multi-platform application, so as I said, multi-platform is which can be utilized anywhere. So the way we develop is I took this idea from Xamarin. So when earlier I used to develop Xamarin applications, mobile applications using Xamarin and Xamarin Forms. So in Xamarin Forms, we have one common code base for UI, and then rest of there are project heads to call those UI, call that UI framework in those projects and then build them. So similarly, what I did is like we have created one shared UI, which is a single application, and then we have that shared UI can contain business logic also. It can contain DB code also, or usually my preference is to keep the DB code in API layer. So whenever we have to do the database database manipulation or database access, we will be doing it via the API, and the shared UI will have just the shared business logic code. And then it can be run on various applications, be it a website, be it a website as a Blazor server application, be it a WASM application, which is Blazor WebAssembly, be it a PW application, that is Progressive Web App, or be it a desktop application. So for desktop application, I'm using a framework called Chromely. So when we are using Blazor desktop application right now, as you know, Blazor is available as a Blazor client side, as a Blazor WebAssembly and Blazor server, which works with SignalR. So there are various frameworks using which you can create desktop application, like electron.net is also supported. Many people have created desktop applications using electron.net as well as Blazor. So they have used electron.net with Blazor to create cross-platform desktop application. Apart from that, the creator of Blazor, who is Steve Sanderson, he has also created a framework called Web Window. So Web Window is a framework which uses the native Chrome browser if it is installed on your local machine. So it doesn't ships the native Chrome browser along with your this thing along with the setup. It checks that if the Chrome browser is available on your machine or not. So if you are using Windows, so if you have Edge with Windows, you can utilize that. On if you are on Mac and if you have Safari, you can use Web Window. If you are on Linux and you have Edge with Chrome installed on your Linux, then you can use Web Window to create desktop application. So that is structure of Web Window, which you can use to create cross platform application. This is being done by Steve Sanderson, but again it is an experimental product. So I tried to use it, but then I avoided it. uh, Electron.net is supported by open source community, but to use Electron.net you need to have Node.js installed on your machine, and I'm not very much fan of Node.js. I don't know how to use Node.js, and I have never used Node.js. So I went with Chromely. So Chromely is another open source framework for creating cross platform desktop application using web technologies. So Chromely basically uses .NET Core to create cross-platform application, and it uses Chrome engine also. I think it uses internally, it uses Chrome and .NET Core to communicate and all those things. I don't know the exact intricacies of Chromely, that how it works internally, but I was able to use it successfully to run on both Windows as well as Mac to create cross-platform desktop application. The example I will be showing would be, of course, on Windows. I'll show. So that is one. Then there is Blazor mobile binding. So you can also create uh, you can also create cross-platform mobile applications using Blazor mobile binding. But again, Blazor mobile binding is an experimental product, so I won't suggest to use to create your product like mobile products to using Blazor mobile binding. If you love programming and if you love to try it out, you can go for it, of course, because internally it uses Xamarin Forms. The only challenge here is that you can't use your web UI to create mobile applications using Blazor mobile binding. You have to specifically create the UI for mobile separately for this. And as I said, that both of these are like it, you can use the Blazor style. So Blazor mobile binding basically gives you Blazor style development. So what is Blazor style development? I'll explain you when we talk about the when we go through the code. It's similar to your ASP.NET MVC, where you have layouts, and then using one common layout, it uses the single page architecture and all. So advantages of multi-platform Blazor application. So it gives you faster development cycle. You can create multi-platform application using single code base. The benefits are pretty much similar as your cross-platform development. It is cheaper as we can utilize all the Blazor resources. More code reusability. You can utilize, as I said, that you one single UI code you can utilize on creating desktop application as well as web application. So that is one benefit. Like disadvantages are many of things are in the experimental mode. For example, the web window is an experimental mode. Then support availability is also a challenge. There are like Chromely people are very active in support. The developer of Chromely, he usually directly gives you support. He's in a different time zone. I'm in India, so there is time zone differences there, but these people are very helpful. But still, if you are creating a production application and if it is a mission critical application, then support is an kind of an issue for this thing. Even though when we are developing web application, that is fully supported. So even this architecture is used only like used by Steve Sanderson for developing web application, be it WebAssembly or be it Blazor server. So for that you can do use this particular architecture. But for creating desktop application, you need to think a bit little. That's the one thing. So let's talk about demo, how the Blazor multi-platform application app works. We'll talk about project overflow, how the project works, how the navigation works, and all those things. So I have opened this sample application. This is the sample application I use for all my blogs, Blazor-based blogs, I would say. It is TR Blazor EX, which basically is an kind of a small form of Tekirat or Blazor example. So if you see here, Blazor components is our project, which is the UI project, which is the base, which is used throughout the application. And then we have this Blazor desk, which is for Blazor desktop application. Then we have Blazor PWA, which is for PWA application. Then we have Blazor WASM, as the name suggests, for WASM, and then Blazor web, which uses the web service. So now the way we develop this application is all the UI is here in Blazor component. So if you see here, we have the CB list, which is a checkbox list component, counter and all. Let me run this web application first. So this is the web application running. You can see here, from here, see Blazor server running at localhost 44389. So this is a web application. If you want to see, we can see in the tools also, like developer tools, and in the network tab, when I hit refresh, you can see here it is a Blazor server. So yeah, see this one, blazor.server.js. So this is a server application. You can see here in the counter is there, checkbox list is there. So all these are basically server application. And then once you can run this thing like this also. So this is our server application running. So now this same code you can see, that's why I have given this title as common UI. So let me stop this thing and let me show you the desktop application, because I won't show the WASM or PWA because it's already run, like it already works. It works similar to your web application. I'll just show you the WASM itself, but let me show you the desktop first. So I'll set this as a startup project, and see, Blazor desk is our default project. When I run this thing, you can see here, and internally in Chromely, it's the support is like you can use Blazor server. So I'm using Blazor server for creating this Chromely application. So you can see this one, the same component is being used here also. I have to do some changes, like changes in the CSS, so that it should work properly, but still it is working as good as your. So you can see the buttons are like here. So these all changes, counter icon moved here, the checkbox list is like this, you can get the checkbox values. So all the example is working here. Okay, so this is our different application. Now let me explain the workflow of the Blazor application. How does the Blazor application works? So when we run our Blazor application in each of these projects, be it Blazor desktop, be it Blazor web, or be it Blazor WASM, each of the projects have one file which is called as your in Blazor WASM, it is called as index.html. So you can see here, this is index.html. In our Blazor web, we have this inside the pages, we have host.chtml. So this is the host.chtml. And in our this thing desktop application also, inside the pages, since I'm using the Blazor server Chromely, so that's why it is using host.chtml. So the host.chtml, we have all the code to call this thing, and from here this app is called type. You can see component type of app. So this app is basically the core or the when we talk about single page architecture, so this is the page of your single page architecture. So this host.chtml basically internally call this app, which is basically the main component, the base component of your Blazor application. So when we talk about here, you can see here this app.razor. So this is your main component, which has the router, like it has the router, it handles the navigation and everything. So all these things are taken care by this app.razor. It takes care of your navigation. Then like how this navigation works is like you have your layout pages. So shared pages, inside the shared folder we have this. It's basically the structure. It not need to be mandatory to keep it inside the shared like folder, but it gives you a better structure to your code. Like when we are using MVVM, we put view models in view models folder, we put models in the models folder. So similarly, when we put the anything in the shared folder, it gives a depiction to other developer that okay, this particular component can be shared throughout the project. Okay, similarly we can also use other components throughout the project using the page directive or using the counter, but shared gives you a clear indication that okay, this is a shared component. So this main layout is your which is the main component which is being called by your app.razor. So if you see here, app.razor has this default layout is equal to main layout. So the difference between this main layout and the other Blazor components is that if you see the counter component, so here is the counter component and like index component is there. So all these are basically different component. Like this is the page as a CB list example. So all these, and I'm using, you can see I'm using the code behind in this case. So you can see here cblist example.razor.cs. So this is the code behind page. I have the whole component code written in the code behind. So this is the code behind page where I'm using this as a cblist ex base, and it is being inherited from component base. So when you create a razor page by default and you don't give, like even we talk about this index.razor or counter.razor, when we create these razor pages by default, they are inherited from the component base. Okay, That is the main thing. Whereas the main layout is basically inherited from layout component base. So this is the difference between the thing. Layout component base is the main container for all the other components. So that is the thing which is being used by in your app.razor. So in our app.razor, we'll see here, we can see here that default layout is main layout. Here we have mentioned that default layout is type of main layout. So layout, so we don't need to, it's not mandatory to name it as main layout dot razor. Many people name it as home dot razor also. So you can name whatever you want. The only thing is that to make it as the layout, you have to use this layout component base. So this is the flow from app.razor. You go to layout component base, which is layout, like layout page, which is basically inherited from layout component base. And inside that, here is this @body tag. So this @body tags call the component which is being called here. So when we execute the code in the navigation page, if you see here nav menu, right now nav menu is in a separate page. When we use some framework, many frameworks don't like, they ask you to do the navigation in the same page itself. So you can do navigation on the same page itself. It's for better organization of the code, nav menu page is given here in the default template. But in my other example, if you see here, there is one another expenser open source project, which I do development in live streaming. So you can see there I haven't used nav menu. I have just used the main layout in which I have kept the menu also. So here you can see that we have href counter, and this is the link. So whenever the user clicks on this link, this body this body tag is updated or routed by the component to which the href tag works. So that's how basically the router navigation or app.razor navigation works in Blazor. So this is the flow of your Blazor application. And as I told you, the structure is like this, that you have your this Blazor components, which is being directly used in our desktop application, WASM application, and web application. So this is how a Blazor application works. I'll show you the code of my project, which I'm developing as an open source project. It is an open source project I develop in live coding. So let me open that. Spencer, here it is. So this is a full-fledged project I'm talking about. It's kind of an product also. It's basically for managing your expenses. So you can manage your expenses and everything using this application. Although this is not complete, I am still developing it. So you can see here, expenser, we have one API project, which is the backend API, which connect to the database and give you all the values from the databases. Then we have the desktop head. So if you want to use this application as a desktop application, you can use this. Then we have this models, which has right now this project is targeting, all my Blazor applications are targeting .NET Core 3.1. So that's why I'm using this application. Like that's why this is .NET Standard 2.0. I have updated it to 2.1 to use C# 8. So it's not like right now this is not the updated code. The updated code, since I use my Mac machine, so it's on my Mac machine, and it's there on GitHub. So from GitHub you can get the updated version of that. Then this UI is the same as the Blazor component. So this UI project, you can see here, I have this pages. Inside these pages I have different pages. Then you can see here inside the shared project, I don't have the navigation layout, so, or nav menu, because in my main layout itself I have implemented the nav layout also. So everything is implemented in the main layout itself. So I won't run this project because this is not the latest code. But yes, you can see here I have used the css and all. And you can see this component here, I'm using Blazorize. As I said that I use Blazorize very extensively, I'm using Blazorize in this project, and these are the components of Blazorize. But again, the layout is being inherited from the layout component base. So layout component base is your main layout, which like kind of host, or which kind of which is kind of a container for all the Blazor components. So this is how your I can say this is how a real world application look like. Apart from the UI head, we have the models also, which can be utilized in the UI head as well as the API. So this is the code reusability benefit which I was talking about, that we can use the, not only we can reuse the UI code, we can also reuse the models codes, or models code also. So this is basically, this was a simple walkthrough through a Blazor application. Now let's get back to our PPT. So I explained you how the navigation works, how I can share the UI logic between the platforms, and how the project Blazor project workflow works basically. So how can you get started with Blazor development? So to get started with Blazor development, you will require Visual Studio 2019 with ASP.NET web development workload selected. So workload is the new term which they started to use after the new setup they provided with Visual Studio 2017. So you have the option to select different workload. A workload is basically a collection of components to do a particular kind of work. So if you want to do desktop development, you will select the desktop workload. If you want to do web development, you can select the web workload. That is Visual Studio setup thing. So in Visual Studio 2019, you can do that. Then official doc site is blazor.net, or you can go on docs.microsoft.net, and from there you can do that. When we talk about web window, you can see the source code of web window from Steve Sanderson GitHub page, which is available like on GitHub, Steve Sanderson's MS and slash web window. Similarly, for Chromely, you can get Chromely apps slash Chromely. And again, as I said, Chromely, similar to electron.net, supports creating cross-platform desktop applications using web technologies. Then there are many community documentation available also. So awesome, if you just type awesome plus the technology, you will get a list of all the community documents of that technology. So for Blazor, there are awesome Blazor by Adrian Torres and Stephen Tree Kramer. So these two listings are kind of a gist of all the Blazor resources. It has courses, it has videos, it has all the open source libraries listed there. Matt Blazor, Blazorize, you can whatever you want to see, all the open source material is there on these awesome pages. So that's all from my side. Thanks a lot for patiently listening to me and watching me. I'm open for questions. I think I don't have much time for questions. I have just 2-3 minutes left for questions. So I'm open for questions. Luis, can you please set me up on the main screen? Let me stop sharing my screen, and then must we know JavaScript for Blazor? No, we don't need to know JavaScript for Blazor. We can, you must know C# for Blazor, but we don't, you don't need to know JavaScript for Blazor. So you can, if you know C#, you can do Blazor development. You can see many of my videos where I have explained like you how you can do Blazor development using C# only. You don't need to know JavaScript for Blazor development. Okay, so I think we are done for now. Thank you.